Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Man on Second podcast. As always, my name is Eric Wiedeke, and I'm joined by Joe Frisaro. Joe, so it was an interesting day at the ballpark for the Marlins. They beat the Pirates in extras. All of a sudden, they're buyers again at the deadline. Bleday is the greatest call-up since Miguel Cabrera. And I guess Sandy is now fourth place in Cy Young voting.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll celebrate the win and put it in its context. They won the series against the Pirates. And my advice is cherish all the wins that you get in the second half because we don't know how August is going to look. And yes, we're going to get to JJ Bleday. We're going to have plenty of time because, to be honest with you, I think August and September we're going to be talking a lot about JJ. As the podcast kind of moves forward. Oh, and a reminder, everybody, obviously we're on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Hit like, subscribe. That helps with our reach and all. But, my takeaway today, to be honest with you, I'm a little disappointed, Eric, and it's really, and I haven't been selfish this way about a player, but I'm a little ticked off it wasn't a Sandy Alcantara win because, once we get deeper into the second half, the Cy Young, and even though Sandy heads into the second half as the Cy Young kind of front runner, it's not a lock. The second half will determine the Cy Young, but, he gets a no decision, 6 innings, 10 Ks, and, the blown save in the 9th. Now, granted, the error factored into that. It wasn't just Anthony Bass, Jesus Aguilar, but ERA now 1.81, still obviously great. 144 in a third innings, 130 strikeouts, 0.90 whip. And that's kind of where I am on it. I can't get past that on this win because, we're going to segue in a little bit to the trade deadline, but I'm going to say on Sandy because right now, no Marlin pitcher, keep in mind, has ever won the Cy Young Award. Dontrelle Willis in 2005 won 22 games. He should have won it, but, it went to Chris Carpenter of the Cardinals that year. And Sandy's the best chance to have a Marlin win the Cy Young, but he's going to need some wins, because we don't know what the final season is going to be, 1-loss record of the season is going to be, or the season total win for the Marlins. But, I would have liked to seen selfishly for him to follow up the great All-Star game with a W, not a no decision.
Yeah, and it's funny because you hear from all these people, guys that would be voting for the award talking about, how wins matter less than they ever have. Yet at the same time, you rarely see a guy that doesn't have, 14, 15 plus wins winning the Cy Young Award. So as much as we want to, step on our soapbox and talk about, wins shouldn't be a starting pitcher stat, and maybe they shouldn't be. But at the same time, the facts of the matter is the guys that win games and pitch well are the guys that win the big awards and the guys that get the accolades.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And so I think Sandy might suffer from that. This one really hurts a lot because it was a game that, this was a Sandy win where he fell behind early and then the Marlins took the lead. That never happens.
Yeah.
That
and
never
a multiple
happens
run and a 2-run lead.
Yeah. That never happens for him. So, it's a little frustrating from that standpoint, just because, he pitched well enough to win. Obviously, his streak of 13 consecutive starts going at least 7 innings was snapped. It wasn't his best start today, but, you go 6 innings, strike out 10, 2 hits, 2 runs, you should win that ball game.
Yeah, especially, again, in a 2-run lead in the 9th inning, that wasn't preserved. So, yeah, that's our little soapbox there. But overall, obviously, we can talk about a nice team win. But, where they are in their season, 5 under as we record this before they head to Cincinnati. And really kind of, last straw Hail Mary type if they're going to somehow try to say they're, buyers. Because I think that's where we're going, Eric, right now. And where do you go with it? Because the Saturday game was as painful as it can be, losing Max Meyer, Coop getting hurt, Andy getting hurt with the shoulder. The news earlier in the week about, Jazz being out at least 6 weeks, which, could be the whole year with the stress fracture. that in Soler, being out, and where they are right now, obviously we're going to see a rush of AAA guys making their way here. But what should the Marlins be doing? And my opinion, I thought they should have been proactive if they thought they were in this to make moves. They've been, incredibly patient in trying to make, because I can tell you this, Eric, they were kind of hoping, they can make some modest upgrades, get Jazz back, get Soler back, have Meyer in there. As soon, you get Luzardo back, get, Cabrera back. And then before you know it, they have one or two guys, just kind of good pieces, not real super impactful. And then you make your run in the second half and hope. But, that was a real gut punch. You lose everybody. Cooper isn't officially on the IL. Maybe he doesn't go there. They're calling it a bone bruise, but maybe, who knows if the swelling in there goes down. Maybe they are waiting to see completely how it looks if they do another picture on the wrist. Because he did at the same wrist that he had surgery on back in 2018. Have to be super careful with him. And so to me, the trade deadline, I'm in sell mode. I'm sure you are too. And Anthony Bass, I don't think he necessarily hurt his stock with the blown save because he had the 3 strikeouts and sliders looking real good. I'm sure teams will call on him. And kind of my thoughts, him, and is it time to really look and consider, especially if you think Luzardo's coming back or Cabrera, to move Pablo? Or do you think Max Meyer's injury kind of makes them keep Pablo? But I still maintain Pablo's your best chance to get a significant return at the deadline. And those would be my two guys. I'd be pitching wise that, Bass and Pablo, I'm definitely listening on them.
Yeah, I think the whole question of buyers or sellers, they have been patient on it this year, but I think that decision's kind of been taken out of their hands at this point, with everything that's kind of happened of late. Because I don't see how you can honestly evaluate this team with the injuries that they have now and say, well, I still think they can make a run. It can't happen. I think it would be a dishonest assessment to kind of say that. You'd kind of be bordering on wishing for it. So I agree exactly with what you say about Pablo. And I want to make a point. I think what happened to Max should actually increase their urgency to move on Pablo. If for no other reason than Pablo around this time of year, every year, it seems that he kind of something goes wrong and he has to miss time. And, Pablo hasn't gotten through a full season yet.
Yep.
And so this is typically the time historically when Pablo might, some of the wear and tear of the long season will start to really wear away at him.
Yeah.
So
finish your thought, and I want to follow on that.
Yeah. So I would look to capitalize on him and Bass for that. But I think Meyer's injury kind of increases the urgency, at least to me.
No, I agree, and that's an excellent point, and it raises this too, because Pablo's in ARB years.
Yeah.
So you run that risk of, let's say, and knock on wood, we certainly hope nothing bad happens to any of these guys, but if for some reason he were to be shut down again, you hurt your chance for trade value. You're going now into the offseason looking, and you got an arbitration, so now he becomes a non-tender type, and not that you would non-tender him, but now you're looking to trade him because they have to clear some of these players off the 40-man, but they got a rush of prospects that they got to kind of get on if they're going to kind of reshape what this is going to look like. You can't just keep everybody all the time. Now Bleday's on, and he joins Encarnacion, and you know what I mean? And at some point, Meyer's already on, and they're making these moves. So you have to be, did they blow an opportunity for, Brian Anderson? A month ago, teams were calling on Brian Anderson, but they were holding tight. And Andy's been hurt for like 3 straight years, and now it's back to the left shoulder that required surgery. Cooper, could they have looked to trade high? That's the danger now. If you go into August, and yes, you're not going to punt on the season with 60-something games to go. I would. But, everyone talks about, and they'll go nutso on the TV and the radio and so forth, easy schedule, all the Reds and the Pirates and all that other good stuff. Well, August, after the Reds and the Cubs, which just did a number on the Phillies, you got the Phillies for 3, the Braves for 4, San Diego for 3, at LA for 3, at Oakland, which isn't good, but, it's still out west. Dodgers at home for 4, and Tampa Bay, and that's taking you into September. So as easy as you think this stretch of 15 has been, now you're not only banking on running the table against now the Reds, even though you're still 5 under, you didn't really make up much in the standings against the Pirates, and now you're going to hope that the Reds and the Cubs are going to get you where you want to go. It's like, if you hold on to players and they break in August, you really hurt the capital you have to have made moves with attractive pieces that other teams would want that could bring you a return. And I'm sorry, I know everyone sits around and goes, "Oh, they're afraid to make a move because they messed up on Duvall or whatever." I don't care if you mess up every trade. You still have to acquire. No one's sitting around going, "Well, I can't make a trade because in 2020 I messed up a trade, or 2021 I messed up a trade." No, if your process is good and you're on players that you think could help moving forward. And Don Mattingly said as much after the embarrassing loss to the Rangers. This roster's construction is, we used the word plotting. Remember, we were all over it, right, Eric? Right from day one. He used the word stagnant. Too many of the same guy. So we could hang on to too many of the same guy and do this again next year. And this is the fear. For all the people who want a 500 record, it's the worst place to be. You don't want to just be stuck in mediocrity, because you don't make up the ground to get to close to 90 wins, which really makes you there. And then you're way off of the 70 wins. It's just frustrating. You could kind of expound on it.
No, because I guess the most frustrating thing is, a lot of these moves aren't, sure, there's a few guys on the roster, Oker, Bass, Pablo. You can get a legitimate return for those guys. But let's be honest, if you're trading a guy like Jesus Aguilar, you're not expecting to get much back. You're
moving salary.
You're moving salary. You're making room for other guys on the 40-man. That's all you're doing when you do that. That should be good enough for the organization moving forward. Because what you don't want to be is what Don Mattingly called stagnant. You don't want to be stagnant in the roster construction, and you also don't want to be stagnant in that you're bringing together the same stale group of guys a year in and year out. Because what this roster can do. We've seen it. And again, I contend to you that even if they were to quote unquote tank and they were to sell off, in terms of outside of Pablo and Bass has been legitimately good this year. What players would they be selling that would really affect the on-field play to the point where they're losing significantly more games? There's not one guy. There isn't anybody.
You're not trading Stanton, Yelich, and
exactly. So
it's the same.
What's the fear here that there's going to be some sort of Adam Duvall for Alex Jackson level misstep here? It's not possible. In terms of outside of maybe Pablo, if you absolutely whiff on that return, but but for everybody else, you're literally making those moves so that you can bring up Lewin, so that you can bring up Gerard, so that guys can get their
Bleday every day
to play, so that you can see Bleday every day,
absolutely, without the pretense, without JJ saving the season.
Right.
He's got to come in and save the season. I want to throw something else because you make a really good point. And this is for, there's a lot of people, if you remember during the CBA, everybody was sitting around saying, penalize the tanking teams, right? Give the Yankees the number 1 pick overall because they go for it. Other teams tank. The Marlins this year did not tank. The Marlins this year went for it. They spent a lot of money for them. They re-signed Sandy. They went over $50 million on Garcia. You could argue it was money not well spent. And over 30-something, 36 on Soler. They went for it. Well, next thing you know, let's say Coop is, and let's hope it's not, but let's say Coop is done for the year. Let's say Jazz is done for the year. Mac's done for the year. They didn't wish this. They didn't go for that. So okay, let's say it's the worst case. More guys get hurt. Wendell's gone down, from time to time. And who knows if he'll hold up. And they lose, let's say, 95 games at the end of the season and match last year. You're going to take away a high draft pick? You want to build that into your CBA? that teams that went for it, but it just didn't work out, and then say, "Oh no, guess what? You can't trade your guys either because you got to somehow, or what do you want to burn Sandy out because he has to beat the Mets so you don't lose 100 games or whatever it is on September? You got to roll him out there on 250 innings because you can't shut him down in meaningless games." I always thought that was nonsense, and I hope that I'm gonna get fired up about it. I like doing that too every now and then, Eric. But because I didn't like when people are saying it because I think that was short-sighted. Just someone people that don't see it through. They weren't looking to tank this year.
No, and again, I think people throw the word around tank far too often. The only team that you can make a case this season that is legitimately tanking is Oakland with what they did in the beginning of the year.
And Cincinnati, I guess you can make
Cincinnati, you can also make a similar case.
But the Reds do have Joey Votto, and I guess Moustakas came back from it. But they have some guys. But they were the ones that went the deepest. But Oakland, correct.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as that goes, that's what Major League Baseball is really trying to prevent. At least as far as I'm concerned, Major League Baseball has no business policing whether Miami, whether the Marlins want to, deal Jesus Aguilar when they're 5 games under 500 at the deadline. When we all know he's a nice player, he's a complimentary piece, nothing more. That's not the difference between the Marlins going for it or the Marlins tanking. And it's ridiculous to assume so.
No, you're right. Yeah, I just wanted to get that out there and be on record saying it because I read it. And the thing is, I could always go on Twitter and just go off because I look at it a completely different lens. And I challenge anyone to argue differently because there's all those people, they sit there because they're usually the people that say it are media and big markets.
Right.
New York media. Yeah, give us the draft picks too. Give us take everything away from the small market teams. Look at Tampa Bay. I mean, they easily could punt to this year with all the injuries they've had, and they're still there. They're still got the 4th or so best record in the American League or something. It's like, so a lot more goes to it, and be careful how much legislation you want to write into the sport because it does solve itself. Because if things had fallen right and Jazz didn't get hurt, and they would have hit that gear and all come together. And the second half would be really fun for the Marlins and their fans. But if they have to pivot, which I think they have to, otherwise I think they're just doing a real disservice because, we're gonna be happy with 78 wins with everyone broken at the finish line, and you're really going into next year with nothing more than what you already have, except for you've run down Meyer. Who knows if Luzardo's going to hold up? Who knows, if Cabrera is going to hold up? It's like, you got to be practical. That's why if I'm them, I'm open to basically, unless your name is Yuri Perez and Sandy Alcantara and Jazz being hurt, they ain't moving him.
Yeah.
Everybody's being listened on. Doesn't mean you're trading them, but everyone's being listened on.
It's just, like I said, it's remarkable to me when the difference between, going for it at 7, it feels like the difference is going for it and finishing 78 and 84 or quote unquote punting on the season and finishing 72 and 90. Because realistically, as long as you've got Sandy, your starting pitching rotations, there's a requisite, outside of literally everybody getting hurt at the same time, it's going to be a relative strength of the team for the rest of the season, regardless.
Yeah.
So and then in those ancillary moves that you make, at the end of the day, is Lewin Diaz really much worse than Jesus Aguilar is, and then, you're looking at, are these prospects really much worse than the guys that they've been trotting out for the last 90 games in some cases?
We could slide over to JJ.
Yeah.
Just his presence brings it's new blood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's just not the same. It's not the same batting order. Okay, he's a lefty bat, and good for him. He's from the area. His parents and family are there. He had a couple of hits. Got his first double. He's showing composure. He's going to be prepared. Great guy. And for him to be there, but it gives just a different energy level. That's where your prospects, they come in periodically, give some energy. De La Cruz had a good day today.
Yep.
He's had a rough first half. And I still go back to all the people are all happy he made the opening day roster. And I'm like, he ain't playing. Would his season look a lot better if he had a month or two in AAA? Maybe. Because, he hasn't been ultra,
Right.
help impactful is the word I was looking for. But today he was, and good for him. But, he's a little more athletic, the first base, clearly they're not athletic with the two guys they have out there now. And so you got to, Lewin probably picks that ball, but, it's, Aguilar who he is. He's been very good for this organization. He's
Absolutely
been a team leader. But, you got to, at some point, you just can't just hope and sit around and go, well, the Phillies lost today and the Giants get beaten up by the Dodgers. But you got to worry about you.
Yep.
And that's the thing. I can't tell you, ownership has been committed. They want this team. They don't want to. They want to be buyers. They don't want to have to sell. But I think from the front office standpoint, you got to look at who's your most logical and who's going to bring the biggest return. And the Yankees they're without Luis Severino in their rotation. Michael King, who was a part of the Cooper trade, he's down. You package, Bass and Pablo to the Yankees or something like that. What's the return going to be?
Right.
They got a good system. I don't care if you're helping New York. Everyone in the organization used to work for the Yankees, including Kim.
Yep.
It's about your return. What is the return going to be? If it's not a good return, you don't make the trade. You pivot. You go to maybe the Cardinals or somebody else. But there's going to be teams that would you want to be bold, make a move. Go get 4 or 5 guys that are going to, a couple big leaguers, a couple that are the high end prospects. Because what you noted, you noted about Aguilar being a complementary piece. I can make the argument. You just look at their lineup. I measure lineups by your middle of your order.
Right.
3, 4, 5, basically. And you look at what the Mets are running out there, with the Yankees having no spots, and the Marlins basically have guys that are going to hit 3, 4, 5 in the Marlins lineup are hitting 6, 7, 8 on the Dodgers.
Yep.
Soler hit leadoff in the World Series, but freaking Freddie Freeman's hitting in the middle of the order there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you could say 2 or whatever, 3. You know what I'm saying? The guys that are driving in the runs. The guy, the Austin Rileys, the Freddie Freemans, those type of guys. The Marlins don't have that.
Right.
They're hoping Bleday could be that. They're I'm excited about Jacob Berry. I hope you guys aren't here. I got Scam Likely calling me. It's always like I don't know if you hear on my phone, but
no, I didn't
Scam Likely is like I must have him on, because he's calling me like 4 times a day these days. But that's why I'm excited about Jacob Berry, because I think he can be that. Try to go get that. Go get. Look at the Dodgers when they made the trade with the Nationals. Now Nationals are taking their lumps, but they got Keibert Ruiz. They got Josiah. They got a guy who could be a good number 2 or 3 starter in Gray and an everyday catcher who's better than average.
Right.
That's better than Alex Jackson for Adam Duvall. And even if Alex Jackson was another just an average decent backup, he doesn't really move the needle. Those players are always easily replaced. You mentioned an interesting name, and it's going to freak the people out there because they'll say no way before we hit the live button. Who would you consider?
Yeah. So I mean, as far as because when I'm looking at this roster, I'm looking at who can I get the best return for, quite frankly. And in terms of position players, that's kind of scarce. And so you turn to a guy like Joey Wendell is probably your best option in terms of, getting a good return for him. And I know the fans aren't going to like it. He plays all over the place. He's been a solid hitter for them. He's been one of the few consistent players on this team, but at the same time, he's 32 years old. He's going to be 33.
He's missed time.
It's if you can get something, you got to strike while the iron's hot, because by the time this team is good, whether that's next year or the year afterwards or what have you, what is Joey Wendell going to be on this team? He's going to be maybe in the lineup half the time instead of 80% of the time. So you get the value that you can extract for guys. And right now, I think his value to the Marlins is somewhere else and getting something back.
You have to think of those moves. You're absolutely right. And, he came from an organization that he was part of that. Yep. He was with the Rays. The Rays had some people. Franco was up, they got some other guys that they could fit. Brandon Lau at second, there wasn't the spot for him, and he gets moved here. And what he's missed time. He's had a couple of, IL stints with the hamstring, which is always, what's that going to be like in late August? And then I think he's making about $4 million, something like that in arbitration. Yep. And he doesn't hit homers. But keep this in mind too. If I'm the Marlins, if I'm Kim Ng in the front office, Pablo and Joey Wendell, you know what I mean? I'm not doing 1-1-1. I'm doing a big deal. I'm throwing them into the pot. Go make a real trade.
Yep.
It takes you to the other guy. What do you do at Miggy Rowe? Would you because from what I've heard, at least this is from somebody outside, didn't hear directly from anyone inside. They said that the Marlins wouldn't move him in the middle of this season. Maybe the shortstop position is just going to be too much to replace, but he's under contract again for next year, over $5 million. Obviously, he's a personal favorite of mine as well. Do you listen on Miggy?
I love Miggy, and what I'm gonna say is no offense, meant to Miggy. He's been great for the franchise. I struggle to see where the interest is coming from on Miggy. Because he is having a down year. He's getting a little bit older. He's more expensive than he has been in recent years. And so, I'm like you said, you're hearing from outside the organization that the Marlins are turning teams down. If teams are coming interested, I'm listening. Because a
team like the Dodgers, for instance,
right,
the team that he came from, which plays no one's. They're not, having him come in to just full-time replace Trey Turner.
Right.
To be honest, I think the Yankees would be a really good fit for him because defensively, the Yankees, if they got struggles, kind of Falafel is not, Miggy's a better defensive player there.
Right.
And I think the Yankees would be a good fit for him. And I could see them showing interest. Now, the teams, guys like Miggy Rowe help you go to the World Series. Because It's like Joey Wendell. They play multiple positions. They give the manager, they give you professional at bats, and they fit a tremendous role. So that's where I think he would have a pretty big market. Now the question is, what's your return? He's worth more to the Marlins in terms of the return, but you're just maybe that's why they're not doing it. If they're not going to get anything worthwhile, you might as well keep him here and
right.
be a part of what you're still building. But it's an interesting one, because they don't really have the air at shortstop to him.
No, and that's where I know that right now in the organization the theme is bats. Figure out the position later. But there are certain positions where it really does matter.
Ball gets hit to him a lot. Is that what you're trying to tell us? Especially if they take the shift away. Now you're going to need.
And I think we've learned this year, center field. You always want to build a team up the middle.
Yeah.
You want your catcher, you want your shortstop, you want your center fielder. Those would be the positions that I would chiefly be looking to fill in a Pablo trade, guys that aren't just good bats, but guys that have high positional value as well. Because it's one thing to get, a really, really plus, first base DH type guy. But if you can get me a plus prospect that plays a premium position, that's all the better, And so that's what I would be shooting for in that kind of Pablo deal. And to circle back to Miggy Rowe, it's not the best audition to be hitting in this Marlins lineup right now. You know, I'm sure the quality of pitches he would get in New York or LA is definitely a lot better.
I'll tell you, a guy I've seen play in person up in Jupiter and in the minor leagues. If the Marlins were going to do business with, say, the Cardinals, Mason Wynn is a really good middle of the middle infielder, shortstop that you got to start thinking that way, because you're not necessarily going to get the next Tatis Jr. Those guys, that the $300 million player, but you could get a pretty good shortstop. Like I'd say, and but a Mason Wynn is a name I would when I was doing like little things for the prospect with David, he was one that I had. Obviously, Anthony Volpe, if they want to do business with the Yankees, but I'm not sold he's a everyday shortstop either. He might be more of a second baseman. So that's there's always risk and there's always questions, and but those are the prospects. And you got a high end, when Pablo's a legit 2 in a rotation, you're going to get that. You could get that, and especially if you want to have fun with the deal and throw Bass in there and make it, throw some more prospects and maybe a big leaguer or 2 into there. But the thing is, you go on Twitter and you try to give a baseball trade, and they're like Dylan Carlson. It's not. No, it's not. The team that's in a better spot than you is not pulling off their big league roster.
Exactly.
They're not pulling their core players away. So you could win 75 games, 77 games. So your fan base could say we didn't lose 90 this year.
Yep.
Quick thoughts on Bleday. We're going to kind of get out of here. We got a good weekend thing here going, but quick thoughts on JJ. I'll give you some thoughts as well.
Yeah, no, I think right away the first thing that pops with JJ is he's got a really good understanding of the strike zone. You can absolutely see the feel that he has at the plate. I like it short, quick to the ball. And he's got better athleticism than I think a lot of fans might have realized at first, because he's a bigger guy, but he beats out the infield single, and he doesn't look super out of place in center.
Yeah, JJ is going to come prepared. We know that. And just quick on him up now. I don't think ideally the Marlins were looking for him to be here this weekend. It worked out personally very well for him because it's Pittsburgh and with the family connection. But if Soler doesn't get hurt, I don't think he's up here right now. Now that doesn't mean August 2nd, because some things could be changing pretty rapidly.
Right.
And so happy for the player to get this opportunity. Why JJ over Encarnacion? From what I understand, Encarnacion is working on some things. They're just some mechanical things at the plate they're working on with Gerard to get him a little bit better. So that's part of the reasoning for those who are curious there. And that's a big part of it. As for expectation, I think like I could see it now, if one walk puts you in Cooperstown, I guess last night's walk got him into Cooperstown by everyone with a blog but me. But it's like, Bryant Hayes was like all-world rookie last year, right? He's not even OPS in 700 this year. We could show you all the growing pains that JJ is going to be going through. Let him, pump the brakes on the overhyping of him. Let him, figure it out. We've run off many a prospect, including the center fielder that everyone thought was going to hit 30 this year because he showed it that second half last year, and Jesus Sanchez. Let JJ, let all these prospects have an opportunity to play, and then let's see what they have, lower expectations, and if they overexceed them, be happy. But, good to see him up here. I would have ideally liked to be up here at a time where it's completely beneficial to him, but worked out great because you only get one opening major league debut, and to get it at home is the best way to do it. So for, personally, good for him. I do also want to hit on Max before we get out of here. Frustrated there, Eric. I have to be open about it because when he was hurt in May, I'm like, is he ready? Is he fine? And everybody in his brother, and I hope we didn't do it as much, but the green light, get him up here. And just hope that it's not as severe. But the other thing with pitching, you could think the guy's fine. It's always that one pitch away. It's always the danger of it and why you need so much of it. But really hard to see Max Meyer coming out of the game after 10 pitches.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. It's really disappointing. Because this was really the start where, you kind of said, well, he pitched against Philadelphia his first time out. That's a real tough lineup. This was kind of the start where you wanted to see him settle in and really show, what made him a top 25 prospect in baseball. And so it's really frustrating from that perspective. And then, you never want to be right about things like this, Joe. But I know that it must have crept up into your head because I know how you feel about Max Meyer and where he might be best suited on the pitching staff. I do think that this does bring that question into light. Absolutely.
Yeah. And look, injuries are, the player's the player. They ultimately, I have my opinions on an evaluation. I talk to a lot of people who are really good evaluators. They have their opinions. We don't always agree. You want the foremost health and durability. That all goes into it. It really hurts to see that just 2 starts, and there was the issue with the ulnar nerve irritation in May. It's frustrating. It is frustrating. We'll worry about long-term projections for him, but foremost, get him out there. But just that said, now plenty of bigger statured pictures breakdown as well. But, that's always kind of a knock on, 6-foot right-handers. It's, you're seeing it even with 6-foot left-hander with Jesus Luzardo. To be a starter, there's a lot of wear and tear to throw 100 pitches every 5 days and be built to that, to do it 30-something times a year. And that's why at least, ideally when I'm profiling it, you're looking for the players that fit the Yuri Perez, Sandy Alcantara, even on the left side, Trevor Rogers, those 6'3" to 6'5", some are a little bigger. And again, they break down too, but I'm just saying this, it seems that they're built more to withstand the workload.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things that, I didn't realize it because I hadn't watched, Max pitch very much, obviously, in the minor leagues. He is the epitome of max effort on the mound. And so that's one of those things, you always look for a guy that's, maybe got a little bit more of an easy delivery to kind of, to mitigate that. But, all that being said, obviously first things first is the health for Max. We did hear what is elbow strain. We hope that it's nothing more than that, and that the organization is as cautious as they need to be with him moving forward, to ensure his long-term health.
Yeah, that's first and foremost. The player will determine where the player is, but the player has to be healthy. And again, that's why I'm always on the crusade. I am, it's funny because I'm sitting here saying trade Pablo. But it's a different reason I'm saying trade Pablo, because I'm a believer in keeping all the pitching. Only, we saw what the Dodgers kind of do. They have that plan. But when you start getting arbitration years, the salary, the wear and tear there, the immediate replacement, that's where you do it. I don't just sit around and say, we got this great starting pitching, and because you see how fragile it is. It's there and it's gone. It's gone a lot quicker, Eater, and how quickly that went. A year ago, we were talking to him. He was, looking sensational. And, but again, get Max better. Hope it's all for the best. And he comes back. Again, enjoy the wins while they show. But again, from my point of view, let's kind of, if you have a long-term future of, what's best for the Miami Marlins, it's to make sure the Miami Marlins maximize their value. You've talked about a bunch, Eric, about what the Rays do. They don't fall too in love with them. That's the reality of this market, yes, they lock up Sandy. They will lock up the players they feel, if they can do it, they'll lock them up. And then you have to be willing to, every 3 or 4 years, turn some of it over to get to where you want to go. But as we get out of here, strong podcast again, on to Cincinnati, and tell everyone how they can find us. And we'll be back next week.
Absolutely. So you can find us on the 5 Reasons Sports YouTube channel. All of our full-length podcasts will be there. And then you can also find our commentary on Twitter. That's going to be @ManOnSecond. That's going to be @ManOn2ND, where you can find all of our commentary as well as clips from our podcast. We do chop those up. And we will be all over the trade deadline as it does approach, just 8 days away now. So we will see you guys next week to talk more about that inevitably. And if anything does happen where an emergency is needed to be called, I'm sure we will not be far behind on that. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.